Just a couple of thoughts. The first of which is I want to give credit to Senator Paul for his creation of this bill. It needs to be remembered that this is the companion bill to what he has already created in the Senate side. And so I admired his stance toward liberty and to individual freedom and to maximizing both. But I particularly like the way in which he's taken his real-world life experience as a physician and applied them to bring liberty to ultimately patients and citizens alike across this country in terms of what comes next in health care. Two, I would single out Mark and Jim and Dave and others, this band of brothers that are representing the Freedom Caucus. This is not my bill. This is in essence, a work of the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus is built around this notion of maximizing, again, individual liberty and freedom. And I think that that's what this bill does. I mean, you think about this notion of advancing the hallmark of the American experiment, it's individual freedom. And one of the places that we don't have that right now is on health care. And so, you know, my dad always used to say that if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And you look at the energy that's been in some of these town hall meetings, it's tied to, when you think about this debate, there's nothing more personal, more vital, in some cases more life and death, than one's health care. It is a big deal. It affects those of us that we love. And the Affordable Care Act was well intended. It was built around trying to correct some of the things that Senator Paul was just alluding to that weren't working right within the system, but it created some of its own problems. You know, it had government deciding what was essential, whether you and your family members thought the same. It had government, in essence, setting up non-insurance insurance, which worked against all the math of what would make a system sustainable. It never decoupled employment from insurance, which I think is a fatal flaw within the current system at large. And as a consequence, in a state like South Carolina, you see premiums that have gone up by 29%, and you see us pull down to yet but one provider. So I think that what's really represented here in this bill that a lot of folks have worked on, whether from the caucus standpoint or from the Senator Paul's standpoint, is an inflection point. This is not about replacing the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. This is about where do we go next in terms of health care so that people are in control. I think that fundamentally in life, there's nothing more frustrating than being in charge but not in control. But if you really think about the paradigm that's represented in health care, fundamentally, all of us as healthcare consumers are in charge, but ultimately not in control. And what again, Senator Paul has seized on is this notion of how do we put the consumer back in charge and in control of what comes next. I think that this bill, like no other, empowers the consumer and creates a marketplace. If I was boil down the whole bill, that's fundamentally what each one of its line items are about. How do you empower the consumer so that a patient in consultation with their doctor is able to make the decisions that they believe to be best for them and their family? And how do you create a vibrant marketplace so that you have real choices out there? I think that there are a couple of things that, again, stand out. One is severing employment from health insurance. Is your home insurance tied to your job? Is your car insurance tied to your job? It's not. And yet, with employment, we have it tied to health care simply because an anomaly of history. And that was the wage and price controls of World War II. And it was in 1948 that the two got coupled as a way of getting around the wage and price controls that existed in World War II. And it's been forever linked, and it's created a fatal flaw within our health system. So I think that what Senator Paul has gotten at, what the caucus is about, is saying, wait a minute, this is a fundamental flaw in the way that we deliver health care these days. Might not we change that? It's about that. It's about affordable plans, as the Senator just mentioned. It's about robust HSAs. It's about, I think, a correct way of dealing with pre-existing conditions. Does. It's about pooling and a whole lot more. But before I talk too much, I will hand off to Emeritus? Do I say Emeritus?
No, don't say that.